Hi, I'm Annette Helde. You may remember me from my 5 appearances in Star Trek, including Nadia Larkin in The Siege of AR 558 and Deep Space Nine. You're listening to Trek Untold.
Welcome to Trek Untold, Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. Today on the show, we have another fairly elusive member of the Star Trek universe whose work you've seen and certainly will remember, but her stories have never really been in the spotlight that much, at least not until now. And it's a shame because she's got some real amazing stories to tell, and that person we're speaking with today is the highly accomplished and very gifted actress named Annette Helde. Annette appeared 5 times in the Star Trek universe across TV, film, and video games. She first appeared as the Romulan named Karina in the DS9 episode Visionary from Season 3. Next, she showed up as a Starfleet officer in First Contact who, well, didn't quite make it out of that one alive. But hey, third time's the charm for her as she was Takar in the Voyager episode Scientific Method from Season 4. She then showed up as a musician in the Star Trek Klingon video game, working alongside Gowron himself, Robert O'Reilly. And finally, she was Lieutenant Nadia Larkin in the 7th season DS9 episode, The Siege of AR 558, one of my personal favorites of all time. Beyond Star Trek, Annette has spent much of her time performing on stage, which we will chat about today, but you may have also caught her in roles in films and shows like Chicago Hope, Nixon, Bean, yes, the Mr. Bean movie, Providence, Magnolia, and Family Law. However, as life went on, she discovered that her true calling may have been elsewhere, and these days has dedicated her life to a very different pursuit. And it's one that when you hear about it later on, you're going to agree that it's definitely a perfect fit for her. As far as I can tell, Annette hasn't done too many interviews about her career, let alone Star Trek. So when I say there's some untold stories in this one, that is not a lie. Her resume is diverse and her skills are unparalleled, so I was very happy to have some one-on-one time with today's very special guest, Mrs. Annette Helde. But before we begin this week's episode, I want to remind you to follow Trek Untold on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Trek Untold, all one word. You can get show updates, check out some fun memes, and let me know what you think about what's going on with the current events in the Star Trek universe. You can also support this show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/TrekUntold, where you can support this show for as little as $2 a month. At higher tiers, you can listen to the shows before they come out, know about my guests well in advance, and even have a chance to ask them questions, get transcripts of these episodes to make sure you get all the info, and more benefits coming soon, including watch parties and live streams. But that's all dependent on more fans like you coming over and letting me know you want to be a part of events like that. If you want some Trek Untold merchandise, check out our store for gear and apparel, including shirts, hats, stickers, water bottles, notebooks, and a whole lot more. New designs will be added throughout the year, so it's always worth taking a peek. Trek Untold also has an Amazon shop where you can peruse everything Star Trek, sci-fi, and geeky on Amazon in one convenient location. If you're looking for a gift for the Trekkie in your life, or maybe want to see some of my favorite non-Star Trek things that you can get for yourself, check out the link for my Amazon shop in the show notes on the audio version and in the description below this video on YouTube. If you're listening to us on iTunes or any other audio platforms that allow for ratings and reviews, please leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review to help out this show. If you're watching it on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to us at youtube.com/TrekUntold and give the video a thumbs up and a comment. All of these things help more people find this show and to continue growing and bringing you awesome guests each and every week. Now, without further ado, let's beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. And welcome back to Trek Untold, and now joining me on the other side of the screen, you've seen her in a bunch of things on Star Trek, you've seen her in a bunch of things in movies and film, and all sorts of other places. I'm super excited today to be chatting with you. We're joined by Annette Helde. Annette, how's it going?
Oh, wonderful. I couldn't be better.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And by the way, for folks who are watching the video version, I see that you're not alone today.
Oh, Bobo, you get to say hi. Yeah, she's my emotional support dog. I have 3 little tinies. They're all rescues and they're kind of reluctant on camera, but they scoot up next to me and they keep me quiet and sane and comfy when I'm shy on camera. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Minnie's in the back. They keep us all in perspective about the world. Don't all dogs? I mean, that's. Do you ever have you ever had a dog?
I never had a dog. Haven't had anything that has four legs. Basically, if it swam in a bowl, I've had one of those, but no animals like that yet. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Sometime it'll call you. Maybe the world would be terrible without dogs. That's what.
Very true. Very, very true. So yeah, now let's jump on in here because we have a lot to discuss today. Not just Star Trek, but so much more that I want to get to know today. So let's kick things off on that note. A little bit more Star Trek centric here. So Annette, what's your earliest memory of Star Trek? Did you grow up watching the series?
Oh yeah. I mean, I am not nearly as versed as the amazing fans of Star Trek who are like bibliophiles. You know, I would come home from school though, and I mean, it was when William. I'm dating myself, but William Shatner. They were in Leonard Nimoy. They were so committed to what they were doing, and they were so zeroed in and focused. And it was a real optimistic show. It was very, you know, I mean, there was my favorite Martian on about the same time, but it was like sort of a lighthearted look at something that I don't know. Star Trek kind of grabbed you. If you was going to grab you, you know, it was taking your minds places that Rod Serling in Twilight, you know, Zone. It was really testing you out there. You know, it's cool.
It's kind of fun that you mentioned my favorite Martian because that was with Ray Walston, and you know he was in Star Trek.
Serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's actually in. I think he's in at least 2 episodes, and he did one with on the Next Generation where he was working, in fact, alongside Patrick Stewart because he played Boothby, who was the groundskeeper at Starfleet Academy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, very cool. So he's done all manner of sci-fi. Plus, he was Popeye's dad in the Robin Williams film. But we don't have to talk about that.
I love that. Yeah.
So yeah, let's get a little bit of your origin story now, Annette. I'd love to hear a little bit about where you were born, who your parents were and what they did, and what little Annette wanted to be when she grew up.
I wanted to be a big fat grandma, just like my grandma. She didn't know that that was the biggest compliment I could have given her because she had such a warmth and girth and, you know. But my mom was a nurse. My dad was a Norwegian. He started up lumberjacking up in, he'd born right over after they got over on the boat. And I'm half Norwegian and half mixture. And they were of meager, you know, modest means who sacrificed everything for their kids. And they were artistic and unique. And my dad was a wonderful golfer. He imbued that through to me. My mom was a creative, lovely, strong woman who I just wouldn't change my upbringing for anything. I grew up in Long Beach, California, and I was always kind of shy and oversensitive. And I was one of 3 kids who were put through that gifted chute. And that puts you in a strange place when you're going to a different special class or the special this and that. And unrealistic, you know, pressures are starting to be put on you. And I'm very fortunate I found the arts early on because that released you from any shyness because you had a place to put it. So in high school, I had this wonderful teacher, Randy Bowden, who, you know, he was having you do things in the little tiny black box we had. Even then, it was, you know, he'd bring pictures of, I don't want to bastardize it by using that picture. Very poignant, wonderful, earth-shattering pictures in the early 70s, late 60s, which were provocative of the war and such. And make, you know, go from there, improv, boom, you know. So it was treating you as an adult early on. And that grabbed me. It was, you know, everything from Flowers for Algernon to, in fact, I remember Flowers for Algernon, he said, what role do you want to play? The leading lady, the doctor. And then he said, and I went up afterwards and I looked at the cast list and it said, the mother. I was like, oh. And he went, man, you know, disappointed? And I said, well, no, not at all. You know, and he goes, that's the juicy role. That's like she gets the meat cleaver and she goes insane and she comes in and bahar, you know. And that started opening my eyes to the wonderful career that would be mine.
So that is really interesting that you basically had just like such a really cool, interesting teacher in those very formative years. I mean, that really is some heavy stuff to be thrown at a child. And, you're
Yeah.
a teenager. I mean, you think you're an adult as a teenager, but you're not. So, I mean, yeah, that is some big stuff there. So, like, what's, I guess, a lesson you remember? I mean, you just mentioned that great story about Flowers for Algernon, but what's a lesson you remember learning from that teacher that you think stuck with you throughout all your time performing?
Well, he was a blessing, and he treated you as an adult, as I said. And I remember one thing is when I first did my first show, I think we were doing Thurber Carnival, not sure, but I was out there in the first, and as I said, it was like a little black box, only about 120 people. Oh no, it was Bad Seed. I was playing the mother, and she had that drunken scene where she comes in and she's crying and all this stuff. And I thought I'd done a wonderful first act because I was real tears and all that, the mother of the little boy who was killed, character actor even then. And then he comes back halfway through intermission and he comes backstage, and I thought he was like going to say, that a boy, good job. And he was like going, Annette, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. And I just went, oh, and that was my first introduction to technique.
Oh.
So that was a big lesson. And other things like, that I can go kind of enumerate, but Randy Bowden, yeah, he was a dedicated one. I have my hats off to teachers like that just give and give and give.
Yeah, shout out to Randy. And on that note, did you go to a school of performing arts once you got out of high school?
No, I went to UC Santa Barbara because they had a good art school, and I was actually also split. I was doing modern dance, ceramics, theater, all the arts. They were just feeding me and comforting me, and I hadn't really decided whether I was going to go into theater or into visual arts. Who has at the beginning of college, and UC Santa Barbara they had surfboard lockers on campus, and my brother was going to Stanford, and I was looking at the pressure wheel he's under, and I went, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to be in the arts, so I'm going to go here. And they had a wonderful drama department, and they were a wonderful ceramics department. And then I got pulled away actually in my first year. They didn't allow you to take a lot of advanced classes for some reason in acting, and I got pulled into rowing.
Okay.
And they like tall people. And a friend of mine had been a rower, and they kind of said, come, you're tall, just explore, come check it out. I fell in love with it. It was like the equivalent of dance and theater because it's an ensemble. Like you get 8 women in a sweet boat, and you all have to be of the same mind and body. And, just it's all technique and passion. So you're all in this boat together, and unless you give and yield to the rest of your teammates, if you try to sky your blade or something like that, the whole boat's going to go up like this. So it was a wonderful learning experience and blew my mind. But then I got back on track with acting, and then after 3 years I realized, the way this program's set up, I just need more, and I don't think I want to go 4 years here. And so I started exploring, because then I was finding out about all the professional electric training programs, everything from Juilliard to, SMU. And I went to San Francisco and auditioned for many of them, and landed on the guy in Seattle, Bob Hobbs. There was Yale, Juilliard. I mean, my guy at Santa Barbara was going, well, go for Juilliard. You're good, blah, blah, blah. But I kept thinking ACT, those places, they all kind of have a stamp. I kind of see these people, the alumni, blah, blah. And I went into the audition with Bob Hobbs, and he jumped up on the table at one point, and he goes, improv, damn it, improv, that's what it's all about. And because he was saying, go through your resume, give me some of this Bernardo Alba, give me some of this, 12th Night. And I'm going, well, it was a long time since I did that. I don't know the exact words, because I don't care, improv, that's what he had these bushy little eyebrows. And my dad is of the Northwest background with all the Norskis up there. So I went there for 3 years, and I was exposed to so many wonderful people and guest directors coming in. It was just, it was they let you be who you are. They didn't try to strip you down and strip you away and put their plant on you. It was like, and people that are still my dear friends, because they only had about 13 people in a class for 3 years. So it was really really cool. A lot of wonderful people came out of that program.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that like rowing was kind of a part of your acting journey, and I think this kind of leads into the fact that much like a sport, acting is a discipline, and it requires a certain mindset to be able to do it and handle it. There's a lot that goes into acting. There's a lot of yourself that you put into a role. So yeah, I just find that fascinating. I mean, I don't know if you've ever thought about it that way too, but just like the amount of discipline that you probably learned from doing the rowing and what you then put into your performing career.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and also it's the concentration. And yet you have to put in all the preparation so that you know all that stuff, all the technique is there, and then so that you can let it go. So that at the top of a race, when they say, et vous prêt, partez, it just all drops in. Just like before a performance, you might have thought about, your through line in this scene, you're this, you're that, how big a theater it is, how much you need to project, how much all that goes, and it just becomes step out onto the ice, because I also was a speed skater. And I'll use that analogy. You step out onto the ice and it's just, and then you're off. It's a very, in fact, at University of Washington, it's the Seattle training program. One of the best things that happened to me was studying with Craig Turner, who was a sensei, and he had studied with somebody really big in the Jacques Lecoq School of Neutral Mask and mask work, and along the lines of what you're saying. Very interesting discipline in movement, where you take away the ego and you let your body become an instrument, and you rid yourself of all those California idiosyncrasies and things, so that you can be neutral, optimistic, and available neutral, but so that you can take on characters like the various amazing characters in Star Trek, for instance, which is I'm not surprised they take theater people, because Shakespeare classics training, all that stuff is really integral. In fact, I used to teach when I came back from New York, to be out here in LA, and I was doing time out here with Mom. When I left my theater job to take care of her, because she has Alzheimer's, I was doing some teaching in neutral mask work. And Jacques Lecoq, who originated the work, has been very integral to a lot of people. And it's freeing, because we splash this up here, and this is what, we see this, and then you take that away, and it's like, what's this really saying? So unless you're fully committed to what you're doing, and it's so interesting, because Star Trek, so many of those people were in so much layers and layers and layers of makeup, but they read, so it was their whole body reading. Like I think of Armin Shimmerman, and people like that you read the whole thing, not just what that was doing. Anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
Oh no, it kind of reminded me when you pull that thing out. I was like, is that Odo I'm staring at right now? It looks just like that. I wonder how much of that was an influence on that design, but. No, that was a great explanation, actually, or something that is definitely going to be relevant later on in our Star Trek discussion. But yeah, let's talk a little more about your theater work here, because I think most of your career, or at least a lot of it, has been in the theater more so than on film and on screen.
Yes.
So I guess I'd love to hear, if you remember, what your very first gig was, your first professional gig in theater, substantial. Let's leave it at that, substantial role maybe, and what you learned from that time on stage.
I would say, I was still in training at University of Washington in summer times. I had a chance to work even in Santa Barbara. I did a summer with one of the first women's theater companies, Theater Process Theater, and we did Bernarda Alba, and we did original shows, The Pits. It was like a 20s version of what happens backstage at the vaudeville shows, and a lot of original improv stuff. And so I had a body of work before coming to Ashland, but I did Utah Shakespeare Festival and Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And Jerry Turner from Ashland had seen me in that. And by the time I got to my third year at University of Washington, and in fact, the first year we were in UW, Bob Hobbs asked you to write down what you're going to be doing in 3 years. And I said, I want to work at Ashland. I really do. And then that blessedly came true, because I got to leave school early, actually, and come down to 3 leads. Mistress Quickly, Wild Oats, I believe. No, and Juno the Paycock, the daughter, And Mistress Quickly, Jim and Paycock. Well, somewhere in there, I don't know if I think it was the second season I did Amelia and Othello, which was, I'll just say that was like, big turning point. Because they have an outdoor theater, an indoor theater, and a little black box theater. And 250,000 people come through there a year. Some people don't realize that, but it was a wonderful training ground because I remember Sheila Allen, who came over with the Royal Shakespeare Company. She's going, you know, you're not going to be coming into your own until you're 30, 35. Get work, get a place where you can do leads now, and get out there and work. And before you go to New York, and then you get put in places where it's going to be slimmer, And she was right. So I had 2 seasons out there at Ashland, and I think Amelia and Othello, because I had a lot of exposure to Shakespeare, and I loved it. I still do, and I throughout my career did a lot of it, and it's so freeing. I don't know, it's the confines of the verse and everything else. Once you get all that technically down, and then you let it go, he's given you these parameters to stay within, so that you've shuttered the choices way down here, because the actual storylines are so huge. The greed, the drama, the envy, all the basic things of life are in there. And Othello was a big one. All the ones. It was an ensemble of people who were working together for a season. And that's always drawn me, because you can trust each other right away, and it's wonderful. And so that was a wonderful leg up. And then I had made the decision to move to New York, because I knew theater was a calling, and then became the world of, you got to learn to do some side gigs till I get,
hustle.
Side hustles. And fortunately, I'd learned to type, and a friend of mine taught me how to bartend, and that was wonderful. But I didn't have to wait too long, because I got, actually, when I was when I was at University of Washington, a lot of casting directors came and directed shows, and Jim Nicola at the Public Theater, Joe Papp's Theater in New York City, had been there, and he was in my corner, I know, rooting for me. But Rosemary Tischler, the casting director there, Goddess, she looked after. I did several shows for the Public Theater, and it hosted so many, James Cromwell, Jimmy Smith. I mean, just the list would go on forever. And I'm sure like 3/4 of them have done Star Trek. But that was, I was doing my first role, my first equity contract was to fill in on an understudy in the Antigone. I didn't get to really go in and audition for the actual cast, but later they cast the understudies, and that was my first really big mind-blowing experience, because they had gone through a few Antigones. Joseph Chaikin was directing. Don't know if you know him. He was all about process, and probably because at 5 years old he was told he was going to probably not live very long. He had a heart condition, so he was always about process. And this man, I was told about 3 hours before going on that I was going to go on for Antigone with F. Murray Abraham of Amadeus playing Creon. And she had a wisdom tooth emergency, and I had to go on. And I got to go in there, and I was up on it. I was ready. And halfway through the performance, F. Murray Abraham, we were supposed to be sharing the stage, and he was supposed to be upstage, and I was like downstage looking up at him. He looks in my eyes, and he little twinkle, and he says, "Okay, you're doing good. You're doing, it's that simultaneous thing that's going on while you're doing the show, And he just starts drifting downstage, forcing me to kind of counter, and he's saying, "Take it, take it." And this big, huge diatribe that she has, and that was exhilarating. It was wonderful, and I got to do quite a bit of that, and then later, Joseph Chaikin had really wonderful things to say. And so that was my introduction to the public. And they were very good to me over many years, doing wonderful shows. I could go on and I won't, but important also in my career was Actors Theater of Louisville. They did a lot of new play festivals that people came from all over the world to see, and everything from bass fishing tournament winners to one we took to New York, which was about the women nurses who served in Vietnam. And you pull from that, like the Siege of AR 558 and Star Trek. Little,
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that.
it all, kind of feeds one another. And I had done Rosalind a couple of times in As You Like It, but that was my favorite time I did Rosalind, and a lot of things at Louisville. Anyway, I digress. I did theater all over the country. As Folger, Shakespeare. I did tons and tons of Shakespeare, to the point where I began trying to become more discerning. You kind of have to ask yourself, do you want to do it because of the literature, the piece, the director, the cast who's going to be in it? Or is it some place you really want to be? Is it the money? Unless you can say yes to a few of those things, you're really questioning, why am I doing this? You can't just once you start establishing yourself in theater, you can't just, at the beginning, you're just kind of like going, oh, thank you, a chance to work, and then after a while, you kind of go, what do I need to be doing right now in my life? That is.
Yeah, this is some real great info, too, for any budding actors out there. This is some good stuff for them to know. And, I picked up on something you said earlier about something someone told you, in fact, which is about you getting out there and getting out in the world and working, getting roles. And I feel like, especially you as a creative person, not just in performing, but in visual arts, I think one of the biggest hurdles for folks who do anything like this, anything creative, is essentially the fear of making something, the fear of rejection, and then therefore they're not going to do the thing that could get them rejected and get that anxiety, And so, I'm kind of wondering how we tie that together, I guess, to what you're doing here. But yeah, that's just something, I feel like it's very important, and you kind of learned at a young age just to get out there and not worry as much and just make the mistakes, do the work, and learn from that.
Yeah. I mean, I was blessed to be from a family of parents that said, unconditional love, and go out there and do anything. We're behind you no matter what you do. And that was lovely. But being an oversensitive person, a little bit too much in the head sometimes, you do kind of become your own enemy if you're not careful. I learned early on, and was reminded of it at University of Washington particularly, that for me, I needed to be physically active and have some sort of sport. I mean, I grew up with surfboards and, things that were centering, and whether it's walks, jogging, mask work, yoga, whatever it is, that's, be around nature, have a whole self to draw on, because ultimately, as an artist, if you don't have anything to say, you're not going to have anything to say unless you are synthesized with, happy with your being and have a spiritual self and all that. I don't know. That didn't answer your question.
I think we're getting somewhere with it, though. I mean, I'm wondering, as a performer, do you feel like when you take on roles, you take a little bit too much of them into yourself? Do you kind of get lost in them a little bit, maybe?
Well, I haven't had the experience of the amazing actors who've had, they're playing, John Gacy or some serial killer for, months and months and months on a film, that they might have more of a tendency to do that. But I've played some pretty heavy stuff, and it can be, once you start performing 8 shows a week for months at a time, it can be that you're living in that world so much, you're kind of getting, dragged down a little bit, and you have to kind of remind yourself. But one amazing opportunity I had was to do Wit, which was written by the Pulitzer Prize winner, Margaret Edson. And it was about a woman with cancer. Emma Thompson did a film version of it, I believe. So pretty much a one-woman show in terms of the most of the verbiage, the language. This woman is a John Donne scholar, and she's found herself on an island. No Man is an Island. It was John Donne. And she has always lived not needing anybody. And she gets this excruciating stage 4 ovarian cancer. And she's surrounded by an ensemble in the theater version of wonderful actors, particularly the doctor and the nurse. I had wonderful actors around me. And it's without an intermission. And we happened to do it at Denver Center Theater, which I was a resident company member for 7 years, in the round. So you're surrounded by people, about 600 seat audience, and that are all playing through their minds about their cancerous experience, the cancer people they've known and loved and whatever. And it becomes, and she's to the end so stoic and not needing anyone. And she submits herself to this sort of trial. And it's the little nurse who winds up, and not little, but she's the sweet nurse who comes up near the end when she's becoming, there have been scenes where she's just like excruciating pain. It's just, the nurses that I researched with it were describing it just like someone taking a hammer to your bones, that kind of pain. And this nurse comes up and she's just finally been exhausted by this one bout of pain and got all medicated. And the nurse comes around with popsicles. And she shares this moment where she says, "You want a popsicle?" And she says, "Yes." And she has this moment where she says, "You don't have to keep going. This is asking a lot of you. And if you ever decide not to, you can become DNR." And she takes it in, and they just have this little sweet scene sharing a popsicle. And in the very end of the play, it is that nurse who winds up coming around when she does decide to give, to transition. And everyone comes in with the paddles and the shock, the crash cart, and trying to get her. And the nurse comes in going, no, she's DNR, she's DNR. She signed a DNR eventually. And it's at that moment that Margaret Edson wrote this incredible scene where the person winds up on, after being on the table. She's been in this, hospital gown tied to a IV pole the whole show. And she just, they were sitting there on the, trying to get her, shock her back to life and everything. And they are unable to, the person on the, bed comes up and she's able to finally see and yield to all these people and be grateful in a state of real great gratitude for all these people that gave to her and blessed her. And she, little by little, she takes off the accoutrements. She just, takes the port off from the, IV off, and she's looking around. She's looking at the doctor who just wanted her for that research so much, and forgives, and goes, and goes around until finally at the very end, off comes the bracelet, the gown, is coming down here. And the very last moment she looks, and then she's going to the light. And just as she goes to the light, her, skull cap and gown, everything drops off. So she's just absolutely. And that was something that I had a problem taking home with me a little bit. There were people, because they would stay in the, not because of me, but because the whole event and the writing and the whole ensemble were very moved, and they'd stay in their seats crying and stuff, for very many, minutes after. And anyway, the point of what I was trying to answer your question, I had to get a really needed body work and would get real deep tissue massage every week to get the toxins out of my body. It was you were taking in so much. In fact, one night there was a woman, you're so in tune in a show like that where it's so palpable, this work that you're doing. And someone flickered out of the back of my just soul. And I turned around in the theater and around, and I felt, it was dark out there, but I felt like something was happening. And I just sort of went, "Are you okay?" And this man said, "I think my wife is having a heart attack." And the God mic came on, and the stage manager's like bringing up the lights slowly. And we got out of, I've never done that in my life, break character, come and break a show. And there she was, in serious cardiac arrest, and they brought up the lights, and there was the weird announcement, is there really a doctor in the house? And so there was, and he came, and the paramedics came, and later I got letters from them, saying, I was like, that's the grace of God working. That's not me. That was something that was, untold over a bunch of people being together doing, work where there's energy.
Yeah, that is a heavy role. I'm glad you described the whole thing, too, for folks who might not be familiar. That is some heavy stuff. That's a lot of weight to put on your shoulders. And something that you clearly took a lot of physical weight. It sounds like you still have a little bit of that weight, too. Like, you're still dealing with, essentially, the trauma of playing a character like that. And those things don't always just go away.
It was a gift, because it gave me a new understanding. I even shaved my head for the role, actually. and then you'd walk around town in Denver, people are looking at you like, oh, and I was like, oh no, I don't have cancer. I don't want to be fake, but my husband is just winning his battle with lung cancer. Things happen,
Which is
anyway,
awesome news. Yeah. So congratulations.
On a lighter note.
Keep fighting hard. So now let's jump over now to when you shifted over to Hollywood for a bit. So, according to IMDb, you did a bunch of things in the same year, and I think the one I want to focus on would be Nixon in 1995, which starred Anthony Hopkins, Joan Allen, David Hyde Pierce, Paul Sorvino. You got Madeline Kahn. I mean, you've got a lot of big heavy hitters in this film here.
E.G. Humphrey, 81 years old.
Yeah. And yeah, you got a lot of big folks here, and you're in this film playing Happy Rockefeller, who is the wife of Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, who's played by Edward Herrmann. So again, this is like your first major film in Hollywood, and it's a pretty huge one to be a part of. So what was it like for you to transition from the stage into this crazy giant world of production? And what do you remember about working on that film?
I came out to Hollywood because my dad had passed along and transitioned. And my mom was alone, so I wanted to be out on this coast. And I actually did have a couple of films before that. IMDb is not, I have to go in there and figure out how to, you probably do too. They don't have nearly the stuff I've done on there, but anyway.
The case, yeah, there's always something wrong or something you weren't in that they're now crediting you for.
Yeah. But that was an interesting one because there's this wonderful casting director, Mary Vernew. She had me come in for it, and she had me go into the set where Oliver Stone was filming some stuff, and to meet him in between takes for this role. And it was last minute. I hadn't had a chance to do a lot of research, and I stepped up to him, and I can be nothing if not honest about myself. I have to be real. I put my foot in it. I met him, and I was so struck by how much he looked like a friend of mine, J.D. Johnston, who's a wonderful character actor and does a lot of Westerns. And I just went, wow, do you know J.D. Johnston? You're just like his doppelganger. He's like, wow. And he goes, the name sounds familiar, but no, I don't know. It's just like this horse-faced, wonderful character actor and then Stone turns to his assistant and says, did you hear that? I look like a horse-faced character actor of hers. It's a friend. I went, no, I don't mean that. I just mean, I just went, oh God, this is like going nowhere. So I was just me in that interview. I hadn't researched Hap Rockefeller, and he passed on me. Mary Vernew called me, I think it was the next day probably, and said, look, I went into him over dinner and showing you all, and I went, he goes, bring me some tape, bring me some more tape. And he was that thorough on every, see in the film, like that long of a person, but that's how thorough he is in detail with every character. Well, she brought me in and had me on tape the next afternoon. So all morning I'd been at the library going through microfiche. I don't remember, what that is. And reading in newspaper articles about Hap Rockefeller. And I went, oh, I know who this woman is. So I went in with my little black sheath, 60s, white pearls, but my, hair, my smile, my sensibilities. I love horses. I improv'd. On this tape that she, and I said, oh my gosh, my husband just giving me this, and I knew the names of her horses and how much it went to her. And it was just wonderful, fun to be her on this tape. And he went, I don't need to see any more. That's her. Over dinner, while I started looking at the tape. And I'd been there the day before being, me, but it's funny. So I had a grand time because that was out, we were filming in Pasadena, and that scene was mainly everybody in the show was in that because he was doing it as a circular, long pan shoot. So even if you had zeroing in on Nixon talking to, people over here, everybody else was still going on. And, so I had a lot of time sitting out on that. Oh, in fact, Paul Sorvino, we were in the, the little director's chairs for you while you're sitting there on set. And he was very enamored of Star Trek.
Yeah. And
someone else had come up who was picking up sides or something for the next day's shoot or something like that. And he had been on Star Trek a lot. He's a Latin American actor. I forget his name, but Paul Sorvino went, oh my gosh. And he got up and he went over to, oh gosh, for my grandson, could you autograph this for me? I am a huge Star Trek fan. I give you like this. It's so cute to see him. He was playing Kissinger, I think.
Yep.
And did he ever do a Star Trek?
Paul Sorvino did, yeah. He was Worf's brother, in fact.
Oh, whether he got his dream.
Yeah, he got to play
That's
Worf's
cool.
brother, his Russian brother, not a Klingon brother. Yes,
Oh,
that actually did happen. Yeah, and I wish I could have interviewed him also. That would have been so great to chat with him about Star Trek. But it's so cool to hear like he was legitimately so into it.
oh yeah. And Anthony Hopkins was so humble. His ability to work on this show, he was able to go out between takes and just hang out, and he'd go over to the fancy craft service table with all the nice, bakery goods and cookies and all this stuff, and he'd go over to the extras area, and where they had a little bit less, fancy stuff over there, and he'd bring all these cookies and cupcakes, and give them, just take it around and share. And he'd also get a crew member had an electric piano because he's a classic pianist, and he'd just sit there with twigs and in between takes, sitting on jamming on this, some amazing Beethoven thing or whatever. And then he'd get up and he'd kind of go, "How am I doing? How am I doing?" Like a Nixon crass, imitation. And people like that, it heartens you because the celebrity in the United States sometimes gets a bad name because there's a lot of crassness, and the people who are devoted artists and actors are, that we were family all over you'd go and you'd get on a show and you sit down at the first read and you look across the table and you go, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you for 10 years. We did a show and blah, blah, blah." Everybody knows each other. And even in, it's a little bit less so in the film and television world, although it's a kind of different one over here. And so it's heartening to experience that and see such wonderful people who are, I've always had a penchant for seniors, and I don't know why. Later on in life, I wound up doing a lot of caregiving for Alzheimer's, people living with Alzheimer's, because my mom, I cared for her for 10 years. And E.G. Marshall was at an age sitting on that set, and I remember, I'm very shy, and I wouldn't you're very easy to talk to, but I wouldn't go hang out with Oliver Stone over dinner at the craft table, and stuff like that. But I remember him watching us, because E.G. Marshall was just a font of knowledge, and here he was in his early 80s, and he's doing this, he was playing Humphrey, and I've learned early on, people of that age, any age or senior to you, have stories. It's wise to listen. Shut up and listen. So I did. It was interesting. Anyway.
From there, from our really deep story, I'm going to go to something a little more fun. Because I want to talk to you about being in Mr. Bean, in the Mr. Bean movie. Because I saw that. I found the clip. Yeah, we're going from Nixon to Mr. Bean, which is, I think, appropriate also. Weirdly appropriate. But yeah, what is it like to work with Rowan Atkinson? That is a master of comedy right there.
Oh my gosh. He is so amazing. For anyone who doesn't know, the scene that I worked on was him coming in and being mistaken for the doctor. So he comes wandering in, and these two nurses just go, "Oh, we've been waiting for you." And we had to work out this integral, coming in, grabbing him, taking him out of his clothes, getting him into his gown, getting him into his gloves, getting him into all kind of a circular, pushing him on his way to the surgery. And he's the whole time going, and he had to work it out meticulously. The tie, the this, the that. So we worked, hours and hours and hours figuring out the choreography of that to make it look just like,
yeah.
And once he got in there, something happened when he was into the surgery room, and some emergency happened in the other part of the hospital or something that called everyone out. And this guy is stretched out there on the table, and he's looking and he's and he's got these M&Ms, and he never's dropped even through the getting changed, his clothes changed. He's flipping them up and he's catching them in his mouth. He's looking at this guy on the table, and he flips it up, and one of the M&Ms drops in the guy's chest, and he's going, "Oh." So anyway, gets in there, bubbles around. You can imagine him doing an amazing bit of finding not only the M&M, but I think it was both of them, but the bullet casing. And everyone comes in and they go, "Oh my gosh, you found it." Hence him becoming that amazing doctor. Well, he, of course, long one take kind of
Really?
Amazing, amazing shooting on that scene. And he would drop back after every take and next to the director and just look at the, take, and he would be going, very serious. He'd get this was the Rowan Atkinson that people don't see. I've seen, and it was just like, I was looking over there going, whoa, because he was very, and he's talking about, da, 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 da. And then he would just, grab that Bean character again to do another take. But he was very, much a craftsman, artist, what needed to happen, this, that, and the other, and would discuss. And then I remember there was one of the guys that were new to any kind of acting or filmdom or anything. And he was an extra that was just kind of like walking past, as soon as the cameras were rolling, he was, walking past people before we started the whole thing. And we did the ultimate no-no, which was, here you are ready to do your bit as an extra, and you're going to talk to the principal who has to keep all this stuff in his head and ready to go. So, I would say probably not want to disturb him. But this kid goes, I just can't amazing at how you do what you do. And it's like, you really, and Rowan Atkinson just kind of answered him, and then he answered him, and then he went. And I was like, oh my gosh, what, presence of mind, and truly a brilliant, brilliant guy. Yeah, that was a hoot.
It kind of sounds like, it reminds me almost of like Jerry Lewis, because I hear he'd do the same thing. Like, he's so wacky on set, but then in between takes, and he was one of the first guys to pioneer this. In fact, he would watch back what he did. He would do playback, change things up on the fly. Like, that's pretty interesting. And it makes sense because, for Rowan Atkinson, there's so much timing in what he does. And timing is like what makes it more funny. It's not just his little beanisms, but it really is like the timing of everything around him and the synchronization of all those elements coming together.
It's so economical. Just precision. And Lucille Ball, too, was apparently that way. Just like, and you'd think it was just flying around, and she was a scientist, Yeah, that was fun. That was a fun one.
Trek Untold will return momentarily.
Trek Untold is sponsored by Triple Fiction Productions. Celebrating 15 years in business in 2023, TFP creates 3D printed Star Trek and sci-fi inspired items that fit into any collection. Whether you're a cosplayer who wants a Starfleet phaser, a Bajoran tricorder, or a Klingon dagger, or a toy collector looking for that special accessory or diorama to make your figures truly stand out, Triple Fiction Productions has exactly what you need. And for you figure fanatics, that includes products that are the perfect size for Galoob, Mego, Playmates, and everything in between. All products are 3D printed in the US, with new designs constantly being updated on their website. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, which is a great way to save money as you build your collection. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, which is a great way to save money as you build your collection. Repeat customers can sign up for TFP's loyalty program for free, where the more you order, the more discounts you receive. TFP also has a Pay What You Want section, where clearance or misprinted items are available at a discounted price. Best of all, every product can be shipped worldwide. As a special bonus for listeners of this show, Trek Untold has a special discount code just for you. Enter Untold10 at checkout for 10% off of all orders with no minimum purchase required. That's 10% off using Untold10. To see all of their products, head to triple-fictionproductions.net. Or to stay up to date on their newest products, find them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Triple Fiction Productions, where something is only impossible until it happens.
Are you looking for the perfect fashion statement to show you're a geek and proud of it? Well, welcome to Geek Girls Castle, where I make fun and functional geeky clothing and accessories for every occasion. My name is Missy, and I started creating my own gear and apparel in 2015 to bring nerdy products to the geek girl population, which does include all LGBTQA+, non-binary, and POC and BIPOC folks. I couldn't find anything for us gals except t-shirts, so I decided to combine my passion for fashion with my fandoms, ranging from handmade skirts with really large pockets, travel accessories like toiletry bags, luggage tags, and zippered pouches, I also embroider nerdy items for home decor like wall hangings and hand towels, and products like keychains, bookmarks, and journal covers. Need something to carry all that in? Well, I make great bags to put all those accessories into or onto. Whether you like Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel, DC, and everything else in between, there is something for every geek girl. My website is constantly updated with new styles and fandoms, no matter what time or dimension you come from. If you'd like to browse my products or ask for something custom, visit me at geekgirlscastle.com. That's geekgirlscastle.com.
All right, so Annette, let's beam into our Star Trek discussion right now. And you've got 5 different roles across the Star Trek universe. That is a lot to break down. So let's start at the very beginning, which, from what I hear, is a very good place to start. And that would be DS9, Season 3. The episode is Visionary, and you're a Romulan named Karina. So how did you get cast for that role, and did you know that it was Star Trek going into it?
Yes, and I had just come out from New York. I did a show down at the Old Globe in San Diego, and I decided it was time to move near my mom and do the film and television stuff, even though I was ancient by that time and by the LA standards. But again, as a character actor, you're not going against the youngsters. So I was, let's see, with a smaller agency. I loved them, but they got me this audition, and I knew it was Star Trek. It was on Paramount Lot, and I thought it had gone pretty well. I was made aware that they had an appreciation for people who had done a lot of Shakespeare, and I could tell because the verbiage in that, as a Romulan, in that Visionary was really mouthfuls. I mean,
very dense dialogue.
Very dense dialogue, and so I hadn't known. I think I got a call back, and then I was waiting to hear. But at the time, I was, I'm not going to lie, I was brushing up my bartending skills. She sheds beneath us. And I was at the ABC bartending school, going through one of they have all these stations, and you're learning to make like 13 drinks in, inside of a minute and a half. And I was going, oh my gosh, do I really want to dab my foot in this again? It was just like, get yourself backed up in it. You want to be able to have something with a flexible schedule that, so you don't have to say yes to everything. Okay, Lord, I'm there. And then I got a call the first day I was going back and hitting that I'd gotten the Star Trek gig. It was my first gig in LA, and it was a guest spot on Deep Space. And I was so thankful. And I was just like, yes. And it was thrilling, and it was fun because it was one of those that you had to get there at like 3 a.m. or no, 3:30 I would always arrive about half an hour before my call for a sit in the makeup chair at 4 a.m. till 7, just getting the makeup on, and rehearsal then, and with wonderful people. And Jack Shearer, I think, was the other Romulan guy. And they couldn't be nicer. It was a wonderful group of people. I couldn't believe that, one episode, it was like a 10-day shoot, and you're working from like I said, 3:30 in the morning till about, it was like 9, 10 at night sometimes. And I thought, you guys are really earning your money. And
talk to me about that makeup process too, because you're sitting in that chair for 3 hours, you said, right? So what is that like for you? Have you ever done prosthetics like that before?
Not like that. I had done some more with wigging and things like that, more elaborate wigs and spirit gum and all that stuff. But this stuff was really elaborate, and did Romulan and all that stuff. And that was severe. But fortunately, the makeup trailers are full of, I find that makeup artists are just always fascinating. They're fun to listen to. They have a little gig going of their own. They're just, they banter. They have it down. So, they're having a great time. And the regulars who come in and out are comfortable. They're, that's the luxury of being a regular on a show, is that you're comfortable. You're the day player coming in for a guest spot, and you're going, I'm going to act like I'm not nervous, but a little bit. But quickly became, invited in and embraced as a family. Yeah, very special. But no no question about it, sitting there in those high makeup. I don't know how Michael Dorn, is that his name, that did the Klingon?
Yep.
Yeah, all those years. And I think he actually had some, problems over the years with, the lasting damage it can do to you and stuff like that. But yeah, it was, that was probably the most severe makeup. Although, frankly, when I did this Voyager thing, and it was a new alien, and it took almost as long, even though there were less prosthetics and things, really ugly. But because Michael Westmore came down and he was inventing it, so he was doing airbrushing of these spots and all this stuff, kind of creating as he went, and that took about as long. But and then the continuity, that's a big time, every day for, 9 days to have those makeup artists. They're constantly doing the Polaroids and all that stuff and touching up in between and all that. And they're a wonderful asset to that ensemble of people who work on that.
And we should add too, not only are you wearing the giant makeup, you're also wearing the giant Romulan shoulder pads, which, tell me, okay, I can see your face right now. You remember them pretty clearly. Yeah. Yeah,
it was hot, and they're stiff, and they're stoic people anyway. And, we've been directed to, allow that to be, as an actor, you're kind of thinking, this seems very, stiff. But, and you kind of settle into this, superior sort of, Romulan attitude. And, it was befitting, it kind of let you to, just the way, of course, it does in certain Shakespearean, roles in theater. The costumes of a Romulan lent itself to that sort of personality.
So in this episode, you get to spend a lot of time working on screen with Nana Visitor and Avery Brooks. What do you remember about those two as scene partners?
Oh, man. And Nana Visitor is, she's tough, she's really, she's a wonderful opponent, and those scenes were, like I said, the Romulans being all that superior attitude kind of coming at them, and they just kept pressing and wanting more information and unrealistic expectations from the Starfleet's, point of view. And Avery's, I got to work with him later on the Siege of AR-558, but he's kind of kicked back strength. He's like, you're not pushing me around, but I'm cool. I'm here. I'm there. And we'll see. And but it was fun getting to be a Romulan. It was so much fun just having all those special effects around us, and parting as you walk through. And but Visitor, yeah, she's really wonderful, because I've seen the other stuff that other episodes she's done and things, and she's funny. She's a whole ball of works, but particularly. She was real feisty in that one. Good, in your face kind of, and I'm, a much more reluctant person. I mean, I'm much more on the back foot kind of person, and to play those kind of roles like that, it's a fun challenge.
I'm curious here, and you don't have to be like a crazy hardcore Trekkie to be into this, but like, were you watching any of the modern Star Treks in that era?
Not a whole lot, because I had been trying busily to make my way as an actor, just gig to gig, for the last, 10, 15 years before that. And it didn't afford you a lot of time. But it was later in life that really I caught up on a lot more. Okay. And of course, once I started auditioning for things and becoming a part of the family, that I went, kind of immersed myself back in. But no, most of my exposure had been with the, the early days of the what were those things called? The little the gerbils. They're just those things. I mean, they captured my attention from the get-go. I was already, but I had seen a lot. I loved Shimmerman's character, the chess games, I loved the bar, I would love the way that they would go into use their rec time and relaxation. It was all wonderful.
Well, my questioning is basically because I wanted to ask if you had actually watched your episodes when they first aired, or I guess by now you've watched them, but did you watch them back when they first aired?
No, 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 no,
No.
no. I'll take. I'm with Robert De Niro on that. I try to watch my stuff as little as possible, because in your head you have one idea of how it seems, and it's just like as a theater actor. I mean, I don't care if it was off Broadway or on Broadway. As soon as you read a review, even if it said something about, oh, how wonderful that scene was, and when she came through those red doors, and she clasped her, person, and it all came tumbling down onto the floor. You never knew, and you went. You can't come up to that kind of a specific scene again without that being in your head.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like you can't unsee it. And some people have no problem reading reviews, and I'm not one of them. I'm pretty I'm kind of a vulnerable person, and so when I see myself, if I'm like, and then I had to, eventually get tape and show it to your agent and show it to other people and that kind of stuff, and have somebody do a demo for you and all that. And so the first few times it's really hard. And I don't know if even making your documentaries, maybe you had more distance because it wasn't you on the camera, but for yourself on the camera, it's just, I don't know, it's pretty rough. It's hard. I can appreciate, though, the editing and the whole picture and the whole story more once I get to see it all in a
Yeah.
story. And then having watched it a bunch of times, then I can go back, and it's not so rough. I can go, oh, that was cool how they did that or that or that. I mean, like there was one, we were doing scientific method on Voyager, and I remember Tate Mulgrew going, okay, this you're going to love, because we were at the end doing this chicken, we were kind of playing chicken with a binary pulsar on the deck, and Captain's, whatever that thing is called. And so she goes, so when the ship starts breaking apart, we're going to go like this. They're going to shake everything. And by golly, we did. We were like going, I thought, for all this high-tech stuff, your kids in the backyard again doing, ooh, now we're going to do this, which was delightful. It was fun.
So from your time on DS9, you then jump over to the Enterprise for a little bit, because your next appearance chronologically is in Star Trek First Contact. This is the second TNG movie.
Oh, yeah.
And also your first time putting on a Starfleet uniform. So how was it to put on that uniform for the first time? And more importantly, how tight and constrictive was that thing to wear?
Very. Very. Although for the women, they always had this kind of like place for your undergarments. You're always kind of the same proportion as other Starfleet members, I find,
How convenient.
There's not a lot of room for different body shapes, I think. I think that later changed. But there was... I got to come on board much after the whole film had been made. I'm in very little of it. But it was after I was doing the first CD-ROM with Jonathan Frakes.
Yeah.
And I was playing this Klingon spy that he had said, oh, he came in one day and he goes, I guess my movie's kind of it's making a good impression. And I'm kind of, they said I can, shoot some more fill-in stuff on it. And anybody, you guys want to be in that? And so I went like, yeah. And he goes, well, we need some more fill-in on, some, Starfleet members being Borgs and this kind of thing. And he goes, you'd be good at that, or you'd be good, And he kind of invited us to come in and work in that way, which was fabulous. And it was, again, in the makeup chair and becoming, with those metal pieces on your face and becoming a Borg. And, but there wasn't a lot of backstory and a lot of depth of, arc to your, characters and such. It was more, like you said, kind of fill in from here to there. But Jonathan Frakes, just to be around that set and the workings and all that stuff was so cool. And even working that CD-ROM was, he was quite provincial, the first one in, and it was kind of, they weren't really smooth and suave on how they were getting in and out of things. But I really appreciated it, because a funny thing happened while we were on the Paramount set. The guy playing the bartender, we were in this like loser lounge, kind of a deal.
It's played by Mike Haggerty.
Yes. He was the bartender, right?
Yeah,
in
the bar in the Klingon game, yeah.
Okay, so the guy first playing it was, we were shooting it, and he kept having discomfort, and he kept going to the production assistant and requiring aspirin. And finally, the PA went up to Jonathan and said, "Man, this guy is like on his 24th aspirin, and I don't know, but check it out. Maybe you can talk to him and see what's going on." And Frakes, we were all kind of around in the chairs and stuff, and he goes, "Hey, I hear you're, not feeling so well." And he goes, "No, it's gas, I'm sure it'll pass." And he's going, "No. You just, this is a game. We're shooting a game. This is your life. This is your health. This is, there's a little hospital on Paramount." And he goes, "Go over to the hospital and get checked out. Because you're going to get paid. You're going to get the dress. You're going to get whatever you need. But you're more important. Your life is important here, dude." And so he did. And meantime, we got word back that, they're kind of keeping him and holding him in there for a while and having doctors come over and stuff. And meantime, he called up his friend and said, "Hey, you want to, drop in and play this bartender in this gig? It's not a, terribly prestigious thing, but it's first of its kind." And meantime, we got word back that the guy had been having a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
And there was Jonathan Frakes just going, "Oh, hold the phone here. There's perspective." That's what I always felt was present in all this world and family of Star Trek. And just thought, man, kudos to you. That was very classy and wonderful. Yeah. The guy was well after that. He did well.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I didn't realize that those two stories were tied together. Your time on Star Trek First Contact, and technically the Star Trek Klingon video game came first. That's a really interesting little transition.
Yeah.
Jump from that. Literally, you're jumping from one set to the next, basically.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was cool.
Yeah, and let's talk actually about that Klingon game, in fact, because I did find the footage of that also. I was able to find it. And you got to work. You got to tell me about this, because you're working with Robert O'Reilly. He's Galron. He's like one of the most famous Klingons in Star Trek. And you're working directly with him, you're singing Klingon opera while playing an alien xylophone. That's a day. Like that mouthful right there is just something else. But you actually lived it. So yeah, talk to me about what you did there, because that's actually pretty interesting, pretty unique experience.
I've been downsizing my house, and I was trying to, get rid of a lot of things. And I ran across some little cassette tape that I had of the Klingon opera, like trying to learn that thing. It was hard. It was really hard. I think I forgot it as soon as I learned it, just for that reason. But it, it's what if is the big magical if in acting is like, okay, what if you were a spy and you happen to be, this and that and the other, and these guys are trying to do that and this thing. And I don't really know that I had quite the authentic backstory that I should have probably for that character. It wasn't that required, but there was enough of. In fact, so in that event, it was much more of a in the moment play off of each other's actors and get live stuff going that's going to be credible and as you can in that weird hairdo and big makeup and things. But it was. I don't remember that much about it, except that was, it was fun being a spy. And they were all, you're on set so long and everyone's in these crazy costumes and get-ups and stuff. It's pretty normal after a while. It's not like it's just there's Fred and then there's Ted, and, oh yeah, and you're shorter, And
then there's Galron over there in the corner with his Klingon makeup on. Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. It's a really fun game too. Just and as far as playing it, it's whatever. It's a CD-ROM game for the '90s, but like watching the cinematics, it is pretty fun just to sit there and watch all that now.
I never saw it.
Okay, I got to send you a link when we're done this interview. I'm going to give it to you, and I'll make sure to highlight the spot you're in so you can just watch that one part again and again on loop.
Oh man, you want me to have nightmares? No, it was fun, and I was flattered to be invited to do it.
Well, so that's three of your things here, three of your times in Star Trek. But you got a fourth also, and we already mentioned, it's Voyager. We already mentioned a few times during the episode Scientific Method. And so we talked a little bit about it already. We talked about the makeup. We talked about some of your space acting. Well, yeah, let's actually focus a bit on working with Kate Mulgrew, because, that is a tour de force right there for a woman to work with.
Yes, and I had met her earlier because back in New York City, I was working at the Public on a show that her husband at the time, they've since gone different directions, but Bob Egan was directing The Ballad of Soapy Smith. And it was big Western based on the real guy. And it had a massive amount of incredible actors who are all edgy, wonderful actors. And we were there at opening night about down there in the village, and Kate had come out for the opening. And so we were there at about 3 or 4 in the morning when the papers were staying up the whole time, and she was waiting for the papers to come out and to read the Post. And she went out, and people were bringing in the Post and New York, Times and all this stuff to get the reviews. And she just struck me because we all came out of Seattle, and I knew Bob Egan from Seattle and stuff like that. And she was so strong and so forthright even then. And I won't go into the whole, what some reviews were good, some weren't, whatever. But it was that show will still go down in history just for the amazing cast and what transpired during that time. But she was a real tour de force, just to be reckoned with as a human being. And I later was thrilled to be working with her on set, and I didn't belabor the point. I mean, again, being, I'm always very respectful of the regulars and the plate, the amount on their plate, and what they have to do in carrying a scene. So I don't initiate anything unless something triggers that she remembers having met me there or not. And I didn't really bring it up. But what was fun was just to have her being kind of, corny and laughing about, this binary playing chicken with a binary pulsar, at this point in time, and we're going to just like, it was a matter of life and death. And you have to sell that. And while they're, you're shaking the thing back and forth, and they're kind of shaking the cameras. And but I love the fact that I got to be a match, because as what are they called? Srivani, I think, were the alien. And they were so androgynous, and we were all bound down and looking real weird with these weird hairdos. And once we became visible to them, because we were invisible doing experiments, and I'd be pissed too if I were, they were going, oh no, there shouldn't be too many fatalities, it's, but it's going to benefit all. It's going to all mankind, and one person had already died. I think there was a crew member who had died, and she was experiencing major headaches, and all these people were losing their hair and all this stuff from their experiments. And she was basically going, get out, get off my ship. But I got to be, again, one of those superior kind of attitudes, aliens that were just cycling. I don't think so. And then she's turning around going, so it was a great, get to go do that with her was fun. And of course, when you're looking at a binary pulsar coming into your view, and you're about ready to, okay, eat it or bite it or, live, and you're kind of going, okay, I'll disappear. And we did. That was always, doing that green screen disappearing thing was kind of fun too. But yeah, she was, and then later getting to see her on Orange is the New Black. Yeah. What a magnificent part she plays on there. I had a lot of friends on that show, and she's really great character on that. Yeah, so that was a privilege, yes.
Now, we should add at this point, before we jump into your next role, you basically have seen the Enterprise E bridge. You've been on the Deep Space Nine space station, and you've been on Voyager. So, this is a nerdy question here. What was your favorite looking set to be part of? Which was the one that wowed you the most? I was in so much shock going into the first Visionary taping. DS9, yeah. First guest spot was Star Trek. I was sort of, and everything looked, majestic and big and spaceshipy and, all this stuff. And so that was pretty impressive. That was impressive. But my favorite was the next one you might ask about is the Siege of AR-58, AR-558, because it was down on that planet in those caverns and stuff. So that was kind of my favorite set. You kind of got used to looking at all the bells and whistles on the more you did Star Trek, it was sort of like, oh yeah, this is a cool version of that. And this is I always kind of thought like it would be fun to have a house like this, but when you're watching from, my television screen and I'm looking at the stuff, they've got all the
add-ins graphically afterwards, so it looks even much more fancy dancy. Right there, it's not quite dancing the way it does on the, a little bit less impressive. But I love that AR-558.
Yeah, let's talk about that now, because that is your final appearance in the Star Trek franchise for now. Siege of AR-558, 7th season episode, DS9. Very memorable episode, one of my favorite episodes of the entire series.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, we'll talk about why, I think, in a little bit, but, I'd really like to hear about the audition for this one, if you remember what you did to get this part.
Well, funnily enough, that was after doing, I think I mentioned earlier, I had done the show of Piece of My Heart about the women who served in Vietnam, and also having had friends who were close to war. In fact, my cousin was a nurse over there, and the grit, because it struck me as such a anti-war episode, the way I perceived it. It was just so gritty, and are you going to leave your, brothers, you can't leave them, and No Man Left Behind and all that. And those, even now, God, coming out of, I won't even get into all that, but pulling out of Afghanistan, and who do you, and people you leave behind. And so the people who are questioning whether or not they're going to have help from beyond, it was an interesting dilemma, because you still respect your commanders, and yet you're growing kind of bitter from the death around you of your brother. And Ray Cruz, who played in that, was so good. He was his character was even much more angry. And my Nadia Larkin, the lieutenant, was so much more, she was trying to be much more pragmatic and find a solution, and giving him the laydown, that was just, the lowdown. It was like, hey, we got nothing here. And he was just a burning, simmering, we got nothing here. He was a real low talker and real, but I remember, so it was easy to play off of people like that who are, because you're holding these weapons that are, ray guns, kind of like, and it was sort of like, they're not like real, AR, 15s and stuff like that. And I probably called that wrong. I don't know guns, but you're having to invest such commitment to make that a reality. And in getting killed and all that stuff, it was auditioning for it was fun, because you got to play a real scene, real nitty gritty. I enjoyed it. I was really glad I got it. And because I could be much kind of more myself, and just without any makeup and stuff, just be a Starfleet member, and of that amazing ilk of, repute. And Avery Brooks, being in the trenches with him. And
yeah, talk about intimidating, because now, you did a scene with him back in Visionary, but this time around you're in a battle scene with him, so it's a different kind of setting, different kind of mood. I would imagine a different kind of Avery that you're working with also here.
Yeah, he was really good in that, because he was torn, he was, and once he made the decision to go down and commit and help this group that needed help and were getting killed and off and all that, you saw the kind of actor he would be in any number of other films and such, let alone, not that and is amazing in Star Trek as well, but it gave everyone a chance to be that very realistic, platoon, moment in your Star Trek world of, and what it would be like, if you're on some alien planet and, push come to shove, it's death and life and all that. So it was sad and fun and, gritty. And I had to get over my, being starstruck. I had to get over it. I had to just, okay, get over your shine, slip into this role, do it, and commit, and go. And once you can, you do. But it was really a privilege. I just loved the whole ambiance and the smog coming up, and we were walking along this ledge in this big cavern and stuff, and it was a really creative set. And
yeah,
It's cool.
Yeah, that's why I'm actually surprised you said this was like your favorite set, because it's such a dark, dim set, and it is just essentially a cavern. But I mean, it sounds like you got to do a lot of things in that cavern that you didn't really get to do in the other episodes.
Yeah. It was, real. I mean, who doesn't like? It's like being 12 years old again. Well, no, more like about 10. My mom would make my brother take us to the field in back of our house and play, army in the mud and the, throwing grenades and, and playing army, just playing cowboys and Indians, playing get them, get you. I mean, that's kind of where our child, and if you can be that childhood commitment and wonder and immerse yourself in that thing again, it's, you tell the story with a lot of, you hopefully, bring people in, you want them on the edge of their seat. And you can't do that without really committing. So.
And it's a much more physical role than anything else you've done in Star Trek, too, because you are running around having shootouts with the Jem'Hadar. So, I mean, and that's the thing I imagine that appeals to you a lot more, too, since you talked about, the athletics being a part of your life. I mean, this is a real Annette Helde role right here.
Yeah, absolutely. That was right up my alley. Because, I mean, I've done a lot of physical, played a lot of, like, a stunt pilot, and bass fisherwoman, a lot of my roles, three or four of the Shakespeare heroines, the pants roles, Viola and Rosalind, and a lot of the pants roles in Shakespeare, and being tall and athletic and stuff. Yeah, it was right up my milieu. It was a wonderful privilege to do.
And you got to work with a lot of cool people, as we already mentioned. There's the regulars. Yes, we already know about all the folks who are normally in Star Trek episodes, but you had now with you, as you mentioned already, Raymond Cruz. He was with you there. We had Patrick Kilpatrick. He was a guest on the show also, in fact. And also, another folk who was a regular on the show, I'm very curious to hear about, Aaron Eisenberg, who played Nog, the late Aaron Eisenberg.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to hear any stories about working with him in particular. Well,
I didn't get a lot of real, just one-on-one. He was kind of part of our little group. And it was cool. I got the impression that, what I'd seen before was that character was one that was not always taken that seriously. And some of the other scenes with his dad and stuff, and trying to, get into trouble once in a while, that kind of stuff. And he was really, at the threshold of, becoming a young man. I mean, it was kind of like I'm stepping up here. Yeah. Stepping up here. And that actor really was, I felt it, it was very, very apparent. And he wasn't frivolous or anything in between, takes and such. He was quite, it was a pleasure.
What do you remember about working with Winrick Kolb, who was the director for this episode? I mean, this is essentially, a war episode. It's very different than just about any Star Trek episode out there. What do you remember about how things were set up, and especially those big fight scenes?
Well, he was a lot of more detailed direction, conversations with him and Avery, and a lot with his DP, the director of photography, and he would be pretty much, he was pretty understated in terms of my relationship with him, in terms of being, give me more of that. That was right. That's right on. That's the right on target there, and just kind of. And if you're being left alone, you kind of feel like you're being, listen to your instincts, keep going with what you're doing.
Kind of do your own thing, basically.
Yeah. It's been a while, and I'm old, I had a 92-year-old favorite actor, friend of mine, Archie Smith, who used to say, whenever he'd fail, he'd be like, well, I'm old, batting his eyelashes, because he was sharp as a tack till he was 92. But, I don't remember exactly some of the direction he gave, but it was more him kind of dropping in and just kind of going, okay, this is, where the stakes are, really getting, kind of elevating the situation. You kind of giving us a temperature check on things, it seems to me. Like when we were inside the cavern and kind of laying out what's happening and stuff, it was looking at the maps and stuff. It was. And then when we got down into the nitty gritty stuff, he's like, he was like, as if you're, playing a war movie, I guess,
And I mean, this episode is basically like Saving Private Ryan for Star Trek, and it's so much more realistic also. I think that's one of the reasons I like it and it appeals to me, because, Saving Private Ryan is one of my favorite movies also. And this is it's very much that. It's ground level dogfighting. There's nothing pretty about this. It is what it is. It's war. It's a literal war, and it's the first time we're really seeing anything like this on Star Trek, with Starfleet people running around and actually doing this. So, again, I think we've talked a little bit about now, what you thought about it and what you brought to the table with some of the roles you had previously. But, just looking at the episode as a whole, I mean, what did you think about the content and the story for this? And, and more so on top of that, did you feel like it was a very non-Star Trek kind of thing to do?
Yeah, from my exposure to, I applauded it. I thought it was, really bringing it home, because here they are, exploring new worlds and bringing what I interpret the mission of, Star Trek has always been seeking the best of humanity and freedoms, from, I'd say humanity, but as well as the aliens, the best of all situations being fairness and freedoms and everyone's rights. It's all, so that to tackle this, particularly the notion of whether or not they were going to leave them, it was heroic. And I thought that his scene, the Avery Brooks' scenes, when he was still on the ship and deciding to, was, would have fit in any really nitty gritty, Vietnam War episodes I've seen. I'd say Vietnam War just because that's my age. Reference. And looking back, and I could see the Green Mile, any of the World Wars, but I loved it. Just loved it. It was what finer crew to put that against the backdrop of. I don't know whose idea it was or whatever, but how it evolved in terms of their scheme of things. Some of you, the fans that know the whole backgrounds and things of that are far more educated than I, probably know more about how that evolved. But I was sure privileged to be a part of it. It's really great anytime you get to do something where you feel like you're, telling an important, wanting to impart something that you believe in. Not that the others aren't, but anytime you can do that, it's you feel grateful.
I mean, I feel like I'm not going out on a limb here when I ask that. Is this your favorite episode that you did in Star Trek?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that was an easy answer. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, like I said earlier, it definitely felt like the most Annette Helde, getting to know you now. I feel like this was the one that was really the most you out there. I mean, what do you feel about it? I mean, how much of yourself did you bring into this character?
Oh, absolutely. It was just stripped me. It could have been me. It would have been, Nadia Larkin, Annette. And that allowed me to be, what if I were in this situation and I didn't have to make many removes from that. It was, I did A Few Good Men, and I was in Washington, D.C., and that was another similar thing. With what if you were, a naval, lawyer in the Navy who was in this situation, seeing unfairness, and you had to fight. Well, then I was able to bring me. I was able to bring me to this because there didn't need to be a remove. It didn't need to be a character actor, who's like someone who has who's an alien who has this presupposition about life. It was like more of it might be the 20th, third century or whatever, but it's still kind of, and it might be the American Federation, but it's the United States in a way. It's sort of like we're a democratic, free society that, and it's just a privilege, man. It was, I've known too many people that involved with wars and things that to not try to do your best to, do them credit, and I know, and especially looking in the eyes of people like Avery Brooks and Ray Cruz, who are just like taking it absolutely serious. You're going to portray someone who's giving their all in a, war type situation. You better come up with the goods and mean it, and make them proud kind of deal, so. Yeah, it was really a privilege. I'm glad I got to do that.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, I kind of just want to see if we can line up things chronologically here, because you mentioned that you moved to LA to kind of start caretaking for your mom a little bit. So is this still happening during the time that you're filming Star Trek?
No, in around 92, 93, I decided my dad had passed in 87, and I was in the middle of a Broadway show, Shakespeare on Broadway, out of nowhere. God bless you, Dad. And then after that, I started making my way. I was in another show on Broadway, Tony Randall's Shakespeare Company. We were doing The Timon of Athens. And I remember reading the book by Pat Riley, The Winter Within. And I was being yanked, I was getting these little God whispers about my mom being alone on the West Coast. And I'm there, I'm in New York, and I'm doing a, wonderful piece. Michael Langham's directing. And I read in the margins of that wonderful book, never underestimate your time on the bench. And I gave myself a little challenge to assess what I needed to redirect. What do I really want to be going? What am I refocus where do I want in my career now? And I needed to answer to my personal pull, which was, I wanted to be near my mom. Mm. And I also wanted to explore film and television. And everyone that I'd known had said, well, wait till Annette, you're so close to, you're doing such good work, wait till you get a Tony or something, like you go out there with clout and this kind of that. And I kept saying to people, I'm a character actor, I'm going to, be able to get some work, or I'm not. And so when I was about in 4 or 5 weeks into that show, I started thinking, okay, well, start planning your move. And once I did that, I was really released. I became so happy. And I had a whole new purpose and surge. And actually, then as things I want to do, I was presented with a chance to audition for a role that was going to come up after the end, because the Tony Randall's company, they had set seasons. They didn't, run until the show just, ran out. So I was able to go to the Old Globe Theater in San Diego to do a friend of mine's piece called Dirt with James Whitmore, wonderful actor. And after San Diego, in Actors Equity, they will pay for many, many pounds of luggage with you. So that was okay, well, I can get to move to the West Coast and get a lot of my stuff there. I didn't have a lot of stuff, but, still have stuff, and make my exit. So I did that, did the show down there. Then I was just San Diego up to Long Beach, moved up there, and I had thought, well, maybe I'll need to be in proximity to LA and closer. But the thing is that the time that I would have with my mom was over tea and coffee in the morning and night tucking her, whatever. It was, and she was still real alert and viable and fun and, could be on her own. But it didn't make sense for me to be up in LA and just, try to, okay, I'm going to come down, we're going to go out to dinner. Or, it was more the everyday nitty gritties, because neither of us are splashy people and stuff. It was just reading the paper in the morning over, that kind of stuff that would be important. So I chose to be there with her and then commute up and back. And then it was wonderful. I got, like I said, with Star Trek blessed me with my first job there. And I did a lot of work over that 94 to 98-ish period. And a lot of episodics. The wonderful recurring role on Providence as the orthopedic surgeon, and some other films, and Crime of the Century. That was fun with Isabella Rossellini. And anyway, I got cast in the Titanic, and I was down there in Mexico filming, and we were doing. It was, James Cameron was shooting about 5 times as much film as he needed. And it was pretty extreme. And it was down there between Rosarito and Ensenada in Mexico. They built like a 90% size of the Titanic down there. And then a smaller one to do all the green screen stunts and stuff on. And we were staying at the Real del Mar, and it was a very small bar. And you had people from the UK, England, Germany, Wales, France, Italy, this international cast on call till 3 a.m. Till the wind dies down, we're going to start shooting again, the scene, la, la, la. And you had people that were just really on edge because it was way over time. People had been there I'd been there for almost 3 months and I hadn't shot a scene yet. And being paid wonderfully. But nevertheless, I was, again, kind of being shyer. I wasn't out there just, making, big palsy-walsy with everybody. I had great respect for someone like Kathy Bates. And, I'm not going to go sit at her table, at dinner. I'm not going to, all these wonderful people around and wonderful times that I had. And the people were wonderful. But I wanted out to do something. So Christmas time came and it was like the last chopper out of Nam and people were like begging to get out. I remember Kathy Bates being down there about 2 a.m. one night and we were all called down there and got shuttled down to pick up at this one scene. And she said, I heard this voice through the halls going, I can't work like this. And I have nothing but respect for that woman. She was not being a pain in the rear. She was being very real and the way everybody was. But that was my ticket out because a dear friend of mine at the time, Israel Hicks, was directing a lot at the Denver Center Theater. And I'd heard all about how wonderful this company was, Donovan Marley really creating a resident company and paying more than they paid on Broadway. I mean, it was in wonderful condominiums. They set you up. They had a whole season, la, la, la. Long story short, I got a call saying, they need another person. They need the B woman for 3 Tall Women, Edward Albee's 3 Tall Women. I said, no, I've talked to Matt McCorkle casting it and it's cast, la, la, la. And no, it's not, Annette. It's not. And I know the director, la, la, la. And I said, well, I don't think I can get out of this. I mean, it's just, and so push come to shove, begged and begged and begged. And James Cameron was very sweet and saying, okay, I'll give you your out and we're going to shoot your scene tonight. I was one of those upper first class women, with all her jewelry, going, oh, they're going to have us back on board by, breakfast and being put into the lifeboats as we were going, her furs and all this stuff. And which is a short little scene. But what had happened was if you hang out, your character got more and more and more. So I was giving that up. I knew it, but that's okay because I was getting an invitation to come out to a resident company to do theater with a wonderful ensemble doing wonderful work and a director who said, on the basis of people who know you, I'm going to cast you in this unseen. So I didn't even have to audition. And he was inviting me to come out to do it. And I began 7 years with the Denver Center Theater that I wouldn't have traded for the world as being one of the resident company members. And, so I was able to do that for 7 years, do their season, and then come home and be with Mom for the most of the summer. And that worked out really well until I went back out to, I was working in Denver when friends of mine and the neighbors were calling saying it was toward the end of the season in 2005. And they said, Mom's acting really weird, la, la, la. And sure enough, I was, she's calling the cops. She thinks there's people in her backyard. And so I had a wonderful dog at the time in a 1980 Mercedes Benz. It was a turbo diesel. We packed it all up and we would make a vacation coming in and out of Denver. Take about 4 or 5 days each way. And I said, Mom, don't call the police anymore. The show just ended last night. I was going to take a couple of weeks, but I'm coming home. Give me 3 days. Just give me 3 days. I'm going to be home in 3 days. Okay. And asking the neighbors just to keep an eye out for her and just threw everything out. I had a feeling I wasn't probably going to be coming back. And I just went free, putting things out from my condo, It was an event and I met the challenge and came home and Scruffy was the whole time was like going, we're really going fast home. We usually take a long time. I get to stay in Santa Fe and they give me a pork chop and, this is not our usual descent. And sure enough, we got her diagnosed and she had stopped taking her meds. She'd run out of one of her medications that if you discontinue it abruptly, it produces a lot of hallucinations and such. So we got her back on things and all that. But regardless, yes, it was the beginning of Alzheimer's. So I made the decision to eventually, I could still leave her at that time. And I toyed with the idea of just doing commercials, but I couldn't leave, go to Mexico and shoot films and stuff like that anymore. And I had to regroup. And so I picked up a couple of little bartending gigs just to kind of pad till I found, what am I going to do? I had a big nest egg, but it basically went over 10 years. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. And my brother was he just is an amazing big brother, and he helped and has continued. And after about 10 years, I couldn't move her anymore by myself. So I moved her to a facility. But she was always one who said, if my head's above ground, I'm going to appreciate life. I'm going to find a way to love it. And she kept up her verve and laughter and spiciness all the way. And she lived with Alzheimer's for 16 years,
Wow.
Which is unheard of.
Yeah, that's pretty long.
And she did not have to go through the end stages, which is forgetting how to breathe, and she just reached a point. I'd been up there 2 days before to see her, and all through COVID, everything. Mm-hmm. And she had met my husband at the time, all through that time, she would like take his hand and my hand, and, she'd become aphasia by that point. So she didn't have a lot of words anymore. But 2 days before, we were up there, and we were always very physical and hugging and stuff. And we were this and that and the other. And she's like looking at and I go, were you seeing people up there? Is that people or the angels? Or she's like, yeah. And she was really talking to people. She was being called. And she took my hand off of her and she put it down on the table. She patted it, and like, you can be on your own. You're okay. I'm okay. And sure enough, 2 days later, when Lydia, wonderful nurse, called and said, I think she's going. And I got there in 3 minutes, and she just passed. And she said she had dinner. She had her ice cream. So we cleaned her up. We put her to bed. She tucked in with her bear. And 5 minutes later, she chose the way to go. And she went out the best at what I'd prayed for. So that was a blessing. But I stayed in caregiving and worked because I knew all this stuff about Alzheimer's. So I stayed in caregiving instead of returning to acting because I knew so much. It was a different calling now. It was a different perspective, and it was another journey, So that's why I'm doing that. I thought I was going to be an actor till I was 90. Just kick me off this stage, But it's been very, very rewarding, and I wouldn't change it.
Well, thank you for doing that, because that's very hard work to do. It takes a special person to be able to handle that kind of emotional toll and the physical toll and just all that mental toll, the mental exhaustion. So, really true kudos to you for being able to do that.
Well, thank you. She was selfless. It was a no-brainer for me.
All right, so Annette, that's pretty much your Star Trek career in a nutshell. A lot of really cool things. And we talked about a bunch of different things from your career. Very diverse, interesting career. But let's kind of lightning around a few things real quick here. And starting with best gig you ever had and the worst gig you ever had.
Acting gigs?
Acting gigs, yep. Bartending doesn't count this time around.
Best gig's got to be Wit. The show I told you about with the woman with cancer, one woman show. It was just so edifying. Worst gig, it's got to be A Christmas Carol, playing one of the Cockney chimney sweep ladies who roll around on the ground, and you have to change about 12 times, and you have to do about 17 performances in a week, and it's in heavy, hot costumes, and yeah, that was the worst.
All right, Governor, how about a moment from your performing career that was most challenging for you, that became the most rewarding?
Playing Rosalind in As You Like It. This time it was in New York for the New York Acting Unit, and I was across from an actress playing Celia, her best friend, who kept kind of working upstage. And as I said before, I'm not a real assertive, aggressive kind of actor. And finally, the director came up and said, step into my office and said, you're the lead in this and that, and I need you to take it upstage and take back your space. I'm not going to comment on the other actors, but you just need to take it. And that gave me the rewarding part is it gave me the psychological permission to, you're right, they need to see you. And there's a reason for them. So I just became much more aggressive about going upstage and countering her, saying, they've got to see this part the way this director wants this to be, happening. We got into a little bit of we both wound up kind of at the way upstage, and the director finally went, "This ain't gonna work." And he took Celia downstage and he said, put her in front of an easel painting in the forest of Arden and going, "You sit here." Okay. And then that gave me free reign to go out and, so it was a challenge though.
So the real siege of AR-558 was in that role, not on DS9.
No, that was, I knew what to do in that. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I just went, it was, the challenge was to make it real, give it your all, commit, and everything around all those wonderful actors you're with and the wonderful environment allowed you to be able to do that. I could have been better, I'm sure, but I gave it what I had at the time. I did my best. That's all I can ask for.
How about most valuable piece of advice that someone ever told you? It can be about life or it can be about acting. Most valuable piece of advice someone ever told you that you still use and think about today?
Sheila Allen from the Royal Shakespeare Company told a group of us, they came over to the United States touring, and Patrick Stewart was one of them, actually, Ben Kingsley. And they're sitting there in our classrooms, and people are asking them questions, talk back, talk and answer at the end of things. And how do you know if you should really get into this business? I know I want to do it. And Sheila said, if you want it badly enough, it will find you. And then I've heard other people say in the same, kind of vein, if you don't need to do it, don't. It's that much of a jealous mistress, shall I say. It takes so much sacrifice. And you do tend to need to become myopic and a little self-centered. I hate to say, it's a breath of fresh air to be out of it right now, being in a serving capacity. Maybe that's why I enjoy caregiving so much, and now caring for my husband who's fighting cancer, because that was then, and I gave it every cent I had. From the beginning of the morning, if I'm doing a show that night, it's on, in my, things to do. Anyway, lightning round, so I won't go on further.
But it's very true. I think anything we've seen you in that we've talked about today and even other things, you really put your entire self into everything that you do. So it's very apparent. I can imagine you're an excellent caretaker. So again, just going to compliment you again on what you're doing, because it's definitely worth complimenting. I think even more than the acting, what you're doing. So last thing for today, Annette. What is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
Oh, well, I was really looking forward, the fans that are so into it, and I was invited to, and I was all signed up to do the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas last year, and because of COVID and my husband's being immunocompromised, at the last minute we had to say, because there was a surge, and we just went, oh man, it's just going to be too dangerous for us, we can't. And hopefully in the future maybe that'll change and I'll be able to do that again. I don't know if you've ever attended that kind of thing, but to see went on the different web pages and stuff on Facebook, and seeing the people's imaginations and their what it meant to be involved in, kind of, because the story, again, I'll go back to the original mission of being part of a show that was about bettering humanity, being the best of yourself. Go out and find, worlds unknown, and bring to it. It's positivity. Being part of that, a piece that you say yes. The reason you say yes to a project, and I've hopped right on board. My gosh, the Star Trek universe is so. And I hopped to the fans too, because that's the people who are all inclusive about. Everyone involved. It's just like it's a real positive experience, optimism, and all that. I'm not very articulate.
We have been talking for nearly 2 hours, Nat, so I think you're allowed to be a little less articulate at this point in the interview. That's all good. But, I haven't actually been to Star Trek Las Vegas yet either. I'm hoping 2023 is the year I'm going to make it happen. So I hope to see you there too. So it'd be awesome to get your autograph somehow. And it'd be cool to take a photo with you. It's been, again, wonderful being able to spend this amount of time with you today also. And really educating
Thank
myself,
you.
my audience, about what you do, who you are, all your cool Star Trek stuff, but more so also, again, the caretaking, because I think that's such really a truly amazing thing to do. So, congratulations on that and what you're doing there. And
Well,
again,
I've been really honored and kind of flattered that you would even think that I should be on here. So thank you very, very much.
Now, I wish you had cats right now, because I could totally say live long and prosper, but I can't do that. So maybe live long and prosper.
Prosper. That's right. Live long and prosper.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Until next time, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trek Untold, all one word. If you'd like to directly support this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter over on patreon.com/TrekUntold, which gives you access to some great perks that can't be beat. Or pick up some merchandise from our store, or use my Amazon shop link to check out all kinds of different Star Trek merchandise. Links for all these things are in the show notes. Shout out to Triple Fiction Productions for being a key sponsor of Trek Untold. Don't forget to check them out and all of the fine folks whose ads you've seen or heard on this podcast too. Special thanks to Scott Ray for providing us with this week's guest. If you'd like to book them for an autograph signing or convention appearance, email Scott at scottray67@aol.com. If you have any questions, feedback, or comments for the show, or would like to suggest a guest or discuss sponsorship options for any of these episodes in the future, send me a message at trekuntold@gmail.com. I hope to see you here again as we uncover more untold stories from Star Trek and beyond, and get to know even more amazing people who have contributed to this ever-expanding universe. Until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz, and remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold is sponsored by TrekSphere.com. Promoting fan-produced Star Trek content in all forms, is powered by the Rageworks podcasting network, and is affiliated with Nerd News Today.